At the end of September, multiple explosions rocked two major pipelines in the Baltic Sea off the coast of Poland. The Nord Stream pipelines, intended to carry Russian oil to Germany, have been rendered inoperable. This comes at a time of incredible stress in the German economy. Energy prices have tripled in the past year, and this attack on a crucial part of their energy infrastructure will only make the problem worse. Intelligence has shown that the explosions were too coordinated to be an accident. This suggests that it was conducted by either a nation-state or as a gray zone incident, where non-state actors carry out the goals of a government under the table. In either case, we're looking at a serious declaration of war by whoever is responsible. So now the question remains, who had the motive to pull off the crime? In the weeks following the incident, there has been a lot of finger-pointing by officials and the media from every side. It will take months to uncover what really happened, and we may never know the full story. But this attack is just the latest in a series of terrible energy-related decisions by governments around the world. Wishful thinking and poor planning have led to a reliance on the import of energy from a few major players on the world stage, and we may be headed straight for an international energy crisis. Arguably the most important resource for any economy is energy. Money spent on energy has a compounding effect. It keeps the rest of the economy running. Without energy, no goods can be produced. Without it, you would have no food, clothing, housing. People would die. This is why having a reliable source of energy is one of the most important responsibilities of a government. It is the cornerstone for quality of life. For 100 plus years, fossil fuels have provided this reliable source of energy. Cheap to produce and able to be refined into multiple types of fuel, fossil fuels have provided us with everything we need to keep our economies healthy and growing. But there's a problem. CO2 and methane emissions have a well-documented and scientifically proven negative effect on our environment. The more fossil fuels we burn, the more greenhouse gases are released into the atmosphere. Done at a high enough intensity over a long enough period of time, and this practice will have drastic effects on our world. Increased temperatures cause ice caps to melt, which in turn causes sea levels to rise. A very delicate balance is offset, and habitats change. Animals die off. Crops that used to be staples of a region can no longer be grown. It's a death spiral. Governments around the world have heard the rallying cries of climate activists and sought to alter our energy grid to produce more clean energy from solar farms, wind farms, and other novel solutions. But progress isn't fast enough, and some doubt that these alternative energy sources will ever be sufficient to provide the world economy with the energy it needs. But that hasn't stopped governments from putting the cart before the horse. Instead of developing the infrastructure first and creating laws second, in many instances they have taken drastic measures which are now causing very real pain to very real people around the world. For example, let's take some of the policies that Biden has implemented in his short time as president. Biden's decision to shut down the Keystone XL pipeline project on the first day of his presidency was an incredibly short-sighted move for a number of reasons. But first and foremost, it increased our reliance on foreign energy sources and diminished our ability to be energy independent. We will have to import more crude oil from nations who have embraced their energy production, such as Canada, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, and Russia. This decision also had the exact opposite effect than what the administration stated. Instead of decreasing greenhouse gas emissions, it actually increased them. The Keystone XL pipeline was planned to be powered by green technology and had pledged to be carbon neutral by 2030. All that crude oil still needs to be transported where it needs to go, except now it will be using far less efficient modes of transportation. This, in turn, will increase greenhouse gas emissions. Then, in May 2021, Biden doubled down on his attack on energy-producing companies by increasing taxes on the oil and gas companies. This further put stress on American companies and increased the likelihood that they will move production overseas for more favorable tax environments. By November 2021, retail prices for gasoline had increased over 40% since he took office. And despite many bad policies implemented by his administration, he ordered the FTC to investigate price gouging by the oil industry. In March 2022, Biden's Security Exchange Commission proposed a new rule that required companies to report on their greenhouse gas emissions. The effect this rule would have is that it is underscored by the implication that high emitters would have heavier taxes levied on them. This would further divert investment away from American businesses into foreign ones. When you have a series of bad decisions like this, it creates uncertainty in the market. In business, uncertainty is risk, and the market always moves with their feet. When it comes to energy production, having as little uncertainty as possible is important because we need a reliable source of energy to keep our economy functioning properly.
But the fault lies in all of you! You!
If you want to point fingers at who is to blame for high gas prices, look no further than Biden's administration. Companies respond to regulations the same way any business does. In an uncertain world, you increase prices to accommodate the fact that you don't know what's coming next. You pad your balance sheets in the short term to ensure your survival in the long term. If Biden really wanted to lower gas prices, decrease greenhouse gas emissions, build a reliable energy infrastructure, and decrease our reliance on nations who don't have our interests in mind, he would be bolstering the US energy sector, not crippling it. But let's talk about other actors on the world stage. Germany's energy history is plagued by bad decisions that have now caused them to be in a full-on energy crisis. Their bad decisions date back all the way to the 1970s, when a group of anti-nuclear protesters blocked the construction of new nuclear energy facilities. As a country without reliable oil reserves, nuclear energy was a promise of independence for the nation, but its people spoke. Instead of independence and reliability, they wanted green energy. Never mind the fact that nuclear is one of the most reliable green energy sources that is available at scale. This anti-nuclear movement led to the creation of the Green Party in the 1980s, whose goal it was to increase power production from renewable sources over traditional fossil fuel-based sources. Despite this movement's best efforts, Germany completely abandoned its climate targets for 2020, and in 2021, over half of its energy consumption still comes from fossil fuels. And where do those fossil fuels come from? Mostly from their neighboring Russia. This leaves them in a serious pickle. Russia is not considered an ally of Germany. Germany is a part of NATO, and in the past few years, Russia has taken hard-line stances against NATO. NATO countries have come out in support of Ukraine, which leaves them at odds with Russia. But there's only so much you can do if your enemy is also the one who props up a cornerstone of your economy. Germany's hands are tied. They can't oppose Russia too heavily, otherwise their access to the fuel will be revoked. This would lead to economic collapse for Germany. But unfortunately for them, the effect of their reliance on foreign energy imports is already taking a toll. Since the start of the Ukraine war, Russia's energy output has diminished, putting strain on Germany's already weak energy system. Despite Germany's best efforts to go carbon neutral, they've been backed into a corner by their own policies, and now there's nowhere to turn. With this new attack on the pipeline that directly feeds Russian oil to their economy, Germany is further weakened. It looks like the worst is yet to come for them. So this begs the question, who would have the motive to pull off such an attack? Let's look at the players involved. First, we have the USA. If this were a covert operation by the US government, their motive would be to weaken Russia by cutting off their ability to transport their major export to neighboring countries. This would be a great way to get involved in the Ukrainian conflict without explicitly stating their involvement. But this would also hurt Germany, one of the US's closest allies. To me, this doesn't add up. There's more risk in carrying out the operation than benefit that we would receive. How about NATO? NATO relies too heavily on Russia's energy exports. To engage in such an attack would definitely be against their interests. Or it could be Russia. Russia could want to punish NATO nations by cutting off their access to oil, and it would be politically expedient for them to claim the attack was carried out by the US or Ukraine. Sometimes damaging oneself can increase geopolitical confusion. At a time when the world seems against you, reminding the countries that rely on your energy what will happen if they oppose you can be politically beneficial. But also, Russia is struggling right now, and they need to keep the supply of oil flowing in order for their own economy not to take an enormous hit. It doesn't seem like a very good idea to shoot yourself in the foot when you've already got a broken leg. But what about Ukraine? Ukraine is invested in hurting Russia any way they can. They have been engaged in full-scale war with Russia ever since Russia invaded them in the spring. This attack does benefit them to an extent. If Russia can't sell their oil to neighboring nations, their economy will further be weakened, and they may have a harder time continuing the war. But this also harms Germany, a key member of NATO, which is a group that Ukraine has been vying to join for some time. If it came out that they were behind the attack, they would likely lose a key ally and be prevented from joining NATO. This is against their interests. The attack could also have been carried out by eco-terrorists not associated with any nation-state. The evidence does not point to this, however. First off, the nature of the attack implies a heavy degree of intelligence and requires military equipment. It's possible that the attack was carried out by a submarine, which most eco-terrorist groups would not have access to. Also, this attack seems too timely given the current tense geopolitical situation. The last possibility that I can identify is another nation-state that is not directly involved in the conflict in Europe, but stands to benefit from it. Countries such as China or Saudi Arabia would stand to benefit from a decrease in oil export from Russia, as they could increase their own production and sell it to the affected countries. But this is also a very risky move, and would bring them to the forefront of the conflict if they were caught. Regardless of who is responsible for the attack, this marks a key moment in our world's story. The geopolitical tensions are reaching a head, and energy infrastructure is now in the crosshairs. This has the potential to cripple the economies of many nations, and is a huge risk to the global economy. The best thing that countries can do today is to pave the way to new domestic energy investment, so that each country can become energy independent. It's the only way to protect oneself in a desperate world. Hey guys, thanks for watching the show. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, smash that subscribe button, and leave a comment. Thanks, stay awesome, we'll see you next time.